Hello, welcome to another YouTube video. Today we're doing something slightly different, something I've not done before. I thought it'd be fun to look back on a book, or at least the very first chapter of a book that I wrote when I was 18. I mean, maybe I started when I was 16, and then I kind of adjusted it as it went on. But I think the finished product was like 17, 18, and I entered it into a fine arts competition in my home state of South Dakota. There was a variety of arts that you could enter into this competition. You could enter singing, you could enter poetry, you could enter paintings, you could enter books. And so I entered the first chapter of this book. I think there was a word limit on the competition. Anyways, it did okay, but not a lot of competition in South Dakota. And I don't have, I think you had to print off your words, your chapter, and then submit it that way. And then you got printed written feedback, and I don't have that feedback anymore. I threw it away a long time ago, but at the time people said, or the judges were like, oh, this is good, this is cool, it could be something. It reminds me of the Merlin TV show, or you're trying to do Lord of the Rings, etc. And I think I was trying to do some of those things. It was popular. I mean, Lord of the Rings has always been popular. I think at the time that Merlin TV show was kind of popular, and Aragon, some of the judges said it was like Aragon. I have not really looked back at this not since then, but that was over 10 years ago. So probably it's been at least 6 or 7 years since I've looked back at this project. I thought it'd be fun today to look over this. I've got a summary that I sent to them as well. I'm up in my loft. I'm not down in my regular, in front of my bookcase. We're just gonna look over this. I'm going to shrink myself down to a small corner of the screen, and we'll throw up the Google Doc here in a second and take a look at it, and I'll kind of see what my thoughts are and things that I would change now if I was rewriting this as a 30-year-old man. Let's hop into it. Okay, so here we are. Again, recording on my computer. So this is a webcam. It's not my usual setup, but the content is the same usual as I usually try to do. We're going to start with, this is the summary. This is a summary. The book is called The Gift Reborn, which I don't think is the best title. And I probably would change that now. It's a little bit generic. And we're trying to do a pretty in your face, allegorical, prophets, the father of all. You can see that right here, the father of all. So this is my in Lord of the Rings, his god character is called Eru Iluvatar, and he creates everything, creates the singers and all the angels, the Einar and the Maiar and the Valar and all that jazz. I think maybe I'm mixing up some of that lore, but essentially he has like a god, as we have God in the real world, and et cetera, right? It's a creation myth, and so I'm trying to do some of that where you have some religiosity, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that. That's a heads up on this is, my Narnia, Aragon, Lord of the Rings, whatever, where you have obviously a Christian author writing something. So this is the blurb, I guess is what it would be. A world of wonder and mystery, a young boy born into darkness, a boy of equal reign, born into light, a new evil threatening to contend with the powers of good, an unknown journey, one that will not come with ease. It's not bad. I don't know. It sounds very young adult, probably. For centuries, the Father of all has not had the need to bestow his light upon the mortal creatures of the world. Light should probably be capitalized if I was redoing this. Now, with a looming threat upon the horizon, a young boy has been born with a gift. That should also probably be capitalized if I was redoing it. A touch of glory, something that could change the face of evil. In the same moment, another has been brought into the world, this time for evil. This time for evil. That's kind of clunky. That's not very good. As the epic tale unfolds, the world will watch as the darkness is matched with the gift reborn. I mean, that's pretty bad. It doesn't so the gift reborn is, to me, it tells me the idea that we have this gift, this super magical power granted from God, or whatever the immortal being is that gives out magical powers, and it's been gone for a time, right? Has not had the need to bestow his light upon mortal creatures of the world. That also doesn't make sense. If we're talking about something being reborn, it would, kind of like Wheel of Time. I think that was also an influence. I should have mentioned it earlier. Definitely an influence in me writing this as an 18-year-old, 16, 17, 18-year-old. the idea of like this thing coming back around, this cycle, this like magic power and ability going from, it was in the world at one point, then it was gone, and now it's back. This just could be done better. This little prose kind of, 5-line kind of thing, not really that bad. It could be fixed and made better. But this sounds probably, I maybe ripped this from a blurb of something and just kind of adjusted it to vaguely fit this story, but it's not great. So reading this, I would not pick up this book. I don't usually read the back of books in general. I'm not a big fan of that. If I know enough to be interested without looking at that, I try to do it that way, and then go in as blind as I can. But this is bad. So let's skip over to the main document, The Gift Reborn, book chapter, N.N. Shepherd, 1600 words. Right away, we start with this whole italicized thing, which I feel like was, Dune has this at the beginning, which I think I was probably also influenced by having this kind of like little historical thing starting the chapter off. I don't really love that as a trope. I think it sort of works for some things. Brandon Sanderson does that heavily in his books, or at least in the Stormlight Archive. Dune, it sort of works because I think the Princess Aurelian, or however you pronounce her name, I believe she's the one who's like cataloging this or like writing this down, and so these little blurbs are from her. And then a bunch of other fantasy has done this as well. So I think I was just trying to copy this format. I don't really want to read through all this stuff. The legend as remembered by the prophet of the Most High, Roganth of the Stave. I kind of like this name. Prophet of the Most High, very Christianese, bit on the nose, which in a certain, in the right genre, like if I'm going like Christian young adult, totally works. But the book really isn't that. It doesn't really, it has themes that are like biblical, but so does Lord of the Rings, so does a lot of things. You could say Harry Potter does, but it doesn't really have that kind of language like this. And I think I mentioned it earlier in a video talking about religion in fantasy. I think if you're a religious person of any format, any genre, any belief system, you will kind of see those themes in the stuff that you read and the media that you consume. And so I don't know that it's, I don't think there's anything wrong with making something explicitly Christian or explicitly Buddhist or Muslim or Jewish or however you want to influence the world with your belief systems. But I think in this case, I don't know. I don't know that the book really follows exactly what I'm trying to say in this beginning. The Lord's Holy Mountain. That's pretty obvious as to what we're doing here. Anyways, I think this is fine. You can skim through this and pause the video if you want to. But we'll go down to chapter 1. Somewhere far above far from the castle Beltari, a bird screamed. Beltari, fine name. Sound carried through the midnight air, ripping across the castle grounds, waking up sleeping guards and startling those who were awake. As the clock tower in the town of Neltoy struck its 12 chimes, a child's cry could be heard from one of the towers of the castle. As the last bell rang through the streets of the city, some of the sound waves carried up along the mountain range, meeting with the great walls of the castle. As the waves went through a window in the lower reaches of the tower from which the baby cried, they met with the keen ear of a man. So a bit of scene setting, scene direction, probably more than I would do now. Maybe it's just because I'm not as flowery as I used to be. Because I think the document for this is, I don't know, this is probably around 200,000 words, like the full document. And it's just basically a traveling story. This kid grows up kind of in isolation, is the chosen one, like the dark chosen one. That's kind of the, I don't know, the impetus of the story. There's two different chosen ones born at the same time, and they kind of meet, and then they have this adventure. And that's kind of the conflict. I don't know. This isn't terrible. The man had short-cut gray hair with a mid-length beard of the same hue. Dark cloak covered his lean form, the tail of the fabric trailing on the ground. So I'm just basically, it's a wizard, right? A bald wizard. Very, not bald, but short-cut hair wizard. Tall in stature, a long staff of wood was held in his right hand. Though he sometimes wore a sword on the belt that went around the cloak at his waist, he had felt that he would not need a weapon on this venture. As the baby cried again, he hurried his pace through bowels should be through the bowels of the tower. Very bad. I mean, I sent this in to somebody to read it to tell me if I was a good writer or not, and I didn't. Bad editing there. Moving far more swiftly than his aged appearance would assume. I think I remember getting a comment on this, like, why would we assume he's slow or something? I don't remember exactly what that means, but um, I'm also doing like the trope of like starting a book with a birth. It's almost in the same vein as like starting with a dream, which I also have versions of other books that I wrote when I was a teenager that start with dreams that I just it can work for some people. I don't personally like it. I think it's, I don't know, kind of a lame way of doing things. Unless the book needs to be about dreams, like Inception makes sense, the movie. He felt something moving down the stairwell toward him, quickly pulling the hood of the cloak over his head. He felt the tingle of his spine as the fabric rendered him invisible. So we have invisibility cloak, which again, in writing the story, I don't use that. I don't think I use that once again, which is just really bad writing. Staying still, he watches a young man garbed in the armor of the castle made his way down the stairs. So this I don't think in this thing, nothing tells us that we're in like magical, fantasy medieval landscape. Um, and then we do say Castle Beltari here, I guess. Armor. Okay, so we're kind of getting the time period of this genre that we're trying to write in. Baby cried again. Let's see. Okay. Old man smiled. Moving his old man smiled. So he, kind of maybe should have smiled, trickily, or smiled. I don't know a better word, but the idea there is he's kind of being cheeky. Finally reached the door that led to the room. The child's cry. The aged figure listened for any sound within, hearing none, asking his father for insight. So that I could have done something better with this, because like the idea of like seeing into the room, he prays. So like we're very heavy on like hitting you over the head. Like, yeah, this is for Christian kids to read. A bookshelf, a crib, two windows, a door. I mean, just too much setting. Like you could have just said like it's a baby's room. It's a nursery. Man can see a figure, presumably a woman. Probably just should have said it's a woman. Doesn't need to, although I guess he's like, looking through the wall, whatever. Thank his father for the gift. The man opens the door. Snapped her weary eyes up, seeing the door open, an old bearded man stepped through. So now we just literally like switch POVs, because she describes him as a bearded man. Feeling something good about the man. It's just terrible. I have a very strong pet peeve in writing where the point of view switches mid like section of text, without some sort of, I mean, you'd have to have a pretty good reason to do that. In my mind, it's kind of unforgivable to like, we're in his viewpoint. The man smiled, like, so we're in his brain right here. He's looking in, he's seeing these things, thanking his father for the gift. And then without any sort of break, anything to tell us that we're switching point of view, we just move to this, right? Feeling something good about the man, she immediately whispered something under her breath. Her eyes became dark red. Without this, I mean, maybe you could. It doesn't matter. I was saying you could shift without this section right here. Feeling something good about the man. Also, this is just bizarre. Like, she's so evil that she senses like goodness, and so she must, recognize that she must be attacked. It's just kind of cartoonish. Her eyes became dark red, and a wind seemed to blow from around her person. Very just generic magic, evil witch type person. The man smiled, and removing his staff in front of him, passed through the barrier the woman had constructed. I mean, what is the magic? What does it do? Right? It's just we don't know either character what powers they have. She gasped with a mixture of fear and awe, closed her eyes, trying to connect with the lord of the castle. As soon as the connection was made, so they have telepathy. The old man was standing in front of her, his staff inches from her temple. What do you want? She screamed through her mind. The child, he will become great, and you will live to see it. Bad dialogue, bad writing, bad dialogue. After responding with a short prophecy, the man touched the staff to her head, watching as her body seemed to freeze. seemed to freeze or froze. Like, light blue streams flowed from the end of the staff, spreading over her face like a web. Pulled the staff from her fair skin. Kind of unnecessary race designation there. I don't know. And lifted the baby from her frozen grip. Then moving to the right, I shouldn't be a little more central here. Moving to the right of the room, the prophet saw, we've seen as a door, a black pedestal sat near the stone wall, light from the moon shining down upon it. Rest of my back on pedestal, magnificent weapon. It had silver and red blade. So that I'm ripping from Aragon, right? The blades are colored in Aragon. Just ripping right from it. The black crossguard and hilt. As he was about to reach out and take the sword, something clicked in the back of his head. Yeah, this is just a weird way of like foreshadowing this like black weapon and then not taking it, I guess. Like, oh, there was some check in his brain and he couldn't take the sword. Just a weird tool that I was using there to foreshadow and then not, I don't know. Although maybe he does take the sword. Quickly made his way across the room to the red sword. Upon touching the handle with the tips of his fingers, the prophet felt something like a great stone fall upon his heart. He dropped to the floor, letting go of his staff, but managing to keep hold of the child from the deepest part of his soul. He cried out to his father, barely gaining enough strength to regain his feet. The sword is so magical and evil. The large door that led into the big area right there, that led into the tower, crashed open, and a tall man in dark red cloak with a red rune stepped into the room. So just red is bad, basically. His eyes were glowing fierce red. He reached out his hand as the old, again, spelling error there, as the old man, to the old man, reached out his hand to the old man. The prophet brought his staff up to fend off the attack and used the remains of his strength to leap from the window. As he fell, he whispered a prayer to his God for the safe escape. Father, you are my light. I give you the glory for what has transpired. May this end according to your will. That's actually not a bad prayer for, the magical world. It's obviously pretty blatant in what it's trying to say, but it's not terrible. Moment the prayer was finished, the prophet met with the black back of a great orange creature, the creature that would take him home. That's a griffin, which I thought was always cool that I wrote that in, an orange griffin, which I also stole from something else. I wanted to mention this that I said earlier about ripping this. Let's see. Let's go to here. Ripping this, the idea of like colored swords from Aragon, dragons, all that stuff. I don't think it's totally wrong to be inspired by things. I thinking back to like 10 plus years ago, probably almost 15 years ago in writing this, I remember Aragon being like influential and pretty big. I think that movie came out, I want to say like 2012. I could be wrong. 2012, I would have been 17. So maybe it was earlier than that. Anyways, I don't think that it's totally wrong to borrow from certain things. Stuff is cool and you kind of want to, you could see, oh, that's really cool. I could use an idea or a version of that. I know that I was blatantly ripping it off, so that's bad. But you just got to be honest with yourself. Are you copying this thing or are you being inspired by it? Because inspiration, we're not really inventing anything new in the world. We are being inspired and kind of adjusting and manipulating and shifting things to our own way of thinking and our own idea of what something should look like. But just blatantly ripping stuff off, that's not cool. So that is where I would say, like, maybe you read this and you go, oh, that reminds me of Aragon, and you're ignorant of, or you're innocent of the knowledge that I was blatantly ripping it off, because I know exactly what I was doing, which was ripping it off. So anyways, we'll scroll back down. So then here we have a little bit of a break right here. There's a whole line worth of break. Watching the old man fall from the window, Avranar, king of the lands and peoples of Valnic. Names are okay. Avranar is obviously actually, maybe this isn't anything. Avatar? I don't know. This is not a bad name. Aragorn, son of Arathorn. Probably doing something like that. I'm trying to put myself back in the mind of myself as a teenager, 16, 17, 18-year-old. King of the lands, peoples of Valnic, cursed out loud. He had already sent a number of spells into the night after the cloaked figure. See, this right here, this kind of like in the Christian young adult like fantasy magic world probably loses a lot of people, because you talk about you start using the word spells or like witchcraft or that sort of thing in any context, even for the villains, and people like certain people would think like Harry Potter, and it's like, all right, it's no, it's evil, it's the devil. We're not involved in that even in an evil sense. So if I was really going hard in the Christian world, I probably am removing this word, as silly as that is. But I think for certain genres, you got to kind of write to what that. If you're trying to genre specify your work, you kind of have to do that. Somehow the man had to feed them all. Avranar watches a rust-colored bird-like creature flew beneath the falling man, catching him on his back, which we already saw, but I guess it's fine to see it from this point of view. Being flew off in the night, heading northeast. The king's best warriors would be sent in the morning. He knew that one of his wyvern was already on its way to bring back his child. Okay, we don't have that much left. We'll run through it. Turning his back to the window, he moved to his dear wife with Rosaria. She was beautiful with soft white skin and flowing red hair. I don't know, that's just funny. She was beautiful. When she used her talents, he loved how her eyes became the color of her hair. So this is just another thing of me saying, like, they're so evil that when they use their dark, evil magic, he loves how evil she is. I don't know. It's just kind of campy. He smiled as he brushed a hand over her face. So much beauty now covered up by the prophet's gift. Her skin felt as though she was frozen, though she breathed and had a regular pulse. The blue marks so it's just blue versus red again. I don't know. It's not bad. It's just fine. It's just typical, I guess. A single point in her forehead raced around the sphere that was her head. It's just funny language. Sphere that was her head. The mark stopped at her neck, tendrils of blue flowing just below her shirt line. It had taken a full 2 days for Avranar to break. So now we're like 2 days ahead. I don't know. That's just a weird. It had taken a full 2 days for Avranar to break the ice curse that was on his wife. The two wept in anguish over the loss of their only child, and they both vowed that they would turn the kingdom asunder in order to find it. In order to find it? To find it, the child? They don't know its gender? We do know the gender. That's part of the whole story. Like, it's a baby boy. That's the main character of the book that we just found right here as a book. The worst part of it, perhaps, was the absence of any news concerning the large search party that had chased after the flying creature. So this just needs to be better. 2 days passed. I don't know, whatever. Rosaria had never seen his face before, and Avranar was sure that he had purged his kingdom of any prophets or any followers of the god they called Erdreme, for that matter. I like this name. I think it sounds really cool, and I think I use it in some other project that I've worked on sporadically over the years. It's kind of hard to read, though. Erdrome. Maybe it's not. Erdrome. It's got like almost like an Irish or Scottish Erdrome. Maigh. Anyway, the husband and wife stood atop the tallest tower of their castle, gazing into the night. It's always dark there. It's always nighttime. Rosaria's face glowed slightly where the blue marks were, and her red eyes marked a distinct contrast. A single tear slid from the eye, glowing as it traveled across several different lines of blue. I think that's kind of a cool visual right there. The blue cursed lines from the prophet are glowing on her face. So as the tear goes down, they kind of like the tear like glows as it crosses the lines. That's kind of cool. Maybe not written in the most eloquent way, but it's a cool idea. Sensing the pain and sadness, Avranar put his arm around his wife's shoulder, pulling her toward him. We will find that prophet, and we will kill him. And I will see my son's face before I die, she said, dwelling on the prophecy of the old man as her only hope. Then she added, and he will be great. I remember getting a comment that somebody was like, this is really confusing, because what prophecy did the old man say? And it's just that reference of like this right here, this in italics, which maybe didn't seem like it was him speaking to her in his brain. The child, he will become great, and you will live to see it. So technically a prophecy, I guess. But that is what we've got. I think it's fine. I think there's some things that I would obviously fix and redo. I think it's an interesting story beyond just that opening kind of prologue thing. It's really not a first chapter. It's really more of just like a prologue. And this is a very long video rambling and talking about this, but I thought it would be interesting to look back and see how far I've come since then. If you're curious to see what my current writing looks like, you can go to my website. I've got a couple short stories there. I've got I think it's like 90,000 words worth of a story I was doing last fall. I was writing 4,000 words every single day and putting that together into a story. And I didn't finish it. I got kind of bogged up around Christmas time. But it was supposed to be 120,000 words in 90 days. So we made it like day 20. So I guess that would be 80,000 words. But if you're curious to see what my current writing is like compared to that, you could go to my website, as I mentioned. I thought this was kind of a fun trip down memory lane, looking back at the arts competition and looking back at just my mindset and the things that I was reading at the time, the things that influenced me, and what I would do differently. So I'm convinced that writing your first novel as a perfected, publishable thing is very difficult. Some people definitely can do it. There are people who, the very first thing that they write is the first thing that they publish. But for a lot of people, I think it takes a number of attempts. And so for me, I've been, actively writing for over 10 to 15 years, writing a novel every single year, probably for the last like 10 years. And a lot of those are probably never going to see the light of day, even after getting published, because they're just not very good. And so even like reworking them isn't going to be worth my time. But I think having those failures and those mistakes has led me to the book that I've been working on recently, the most this year, that I think is sellable, is a book that I can publish and write subsequent novels to, and just make a world around. And so I kind of think like, okay, yeah, I wrote this Gift Reborn, very Christianese, very young adults kind of youth group story. I wrote that, as a 16-year-old, perfected it by the time I was 18 and had it, entered in this teens writing contest. I'm kind of glad that I just powered through and didn't just commit to that first story, because as you saw in this video, it's not the greatest thing. And I think the things I've written since then are a lot better. So those are my thoughts on reading over that. Thanks for following along. This is a very long video of me looking over my own work and feeling inadequate about where I was, but hopeful about where I've come. So thanks for watching. Thanks for following along. And we'll keep up the videos and hopefully just grind out more and make more content. So thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next video.